Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Really excited about tonight's show. I get to spend the next hour talking about the quantum evolution of consciousness with Dr. Johan Calleman. His new book has released, The Global Mind and the Rise of Civilization, the Quantum Evolution of Consciousness. Very excited to be speaking with him on this. We have so much going on in the world today. As always, it always seems there's something going on, but we are in the United States here approaching a really interesting timing with the elections coming up. We have a lot of stuff happening in this planet. And if you look on the news or even online or even in your own meditation, you can feel that energy. You can feel what's going on to a certain extent. So this is going to be a really timely conversation, and I'm really looking forward to it. I have spoken with Dr. Calleman before on the air, and you can find those archives of our past episodes on my YouTube channel. Dr. Calleman holds a PhD in physical biology from the University of Stockholm. He's a leading expert on the Mayan calendar, and he is also the author of The Mayan Calendar and the Transformation of Consciousness and The Purposeful Universe. He lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I have some great questions for him tonight, and I'm really excited to see what he has to say and how he's going to weigh in on all these things that are happening. We have weather patterns happening, big weather patterns happening. We have social movements happening, lots of different paradigms that seem to be calling our attention. And so I'm really anxious to see how he sees all of this based on his new release. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Calleman.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this, Hillary.
It's good to have you back. Thanks for coming. So let's just get right into it. Let's start with talking. Could you talk to us a little bit about how our brains receive consciousness from what you call the global mind?
Yeah, well, what I found, and it's based on studies of the Mayan calendar over a long period of time, is that the minds that we have are not created by our brains. Instead, the mind is something that we download. Our individual brains download a global mind. And this global mind is not static. It undergoes a wave form, so to speak. And actually there are 9 different waves that at the current time is downloadable by our brains. And what this means is that humanity as a whole and we as individuals, how we think about matters change as a result of the ups and downs of these waveforms. So that would be my in simple, short version of how I understand human thinking to occur. But it's also it has wide-ranging consequences because that means that human history really then is a product of these kind of waves, and how humans see things, how they think about things, and also the kind of reality, the kind of social reality that they're creating, and the kind of technological realities that they are creating, actually is something that is really very much subject to this kind of a wave plan, if you like, and it's coming, in my view, and in the ancient view, many ancient people would say something similar. It emanates from the center of the universe, and so what is happening you mentioned the political changes that is happening at this particular point in time. It really is affected very much of changes in the global mind, and even though most people are not aware of it, most people would think that their own way of thinking is a product of their own brains, so to speak. And certainly that is the way that it's been taught in schools, and it's sort of the dominating materialist paradigm that is being told in biology and medicine and so forth, is the idea that our brains create our minds. But this is completely different. It's the opposite idea, namely that our brains download the mind that comes from the outside, really, and from the Earth's mind, you might say, the global mind. But that, in turn, is really a function of these waves that are coming from the center of the universe and affecting our planet, and then we, in turn, download the changing ways of looking at the world.
Now, if I understand you correctly, is there a universal mind and an earth mind, or are they the same thing?
Well, I cannot really answer that. I think there is you might talk about a universal mind that emanates from the center of the universe, or what the ancient peoples would talk about as the cosmic tree of life. And then, but then that center broadcasts these waves, and then when these waves are received by our planet, then it creates what you might call a global mind. Now, really, the question then is if there are other planets out there with life in other solar systems and so forth, is the global mind that they are receiving exactly the same as on our planet? I would think not. I think it's being focused differently, and even though there is a common source in a universal mind.
Interesting. Now, how does the Mayan calendar provide a blueprint for these consciousness downloads that you describe have happened throughout history in these waves?
Yeah. Well, it's a number of different waves. It's sort of an expanded quantum physics that enters a frequency range that is not normally studied by physicists. And these waves was what the Maya built their calendar system on. They charted the ascending and descending phases of these particular waves, and they had a name for it even. This wave that they would chart would also be called the plumed serpent, which was a bringer of civilization in the lore of ancient Mexico, not only the Maya but also the Aztecs and Toltecs and several other people, so that there was sort of a waveform that they would symbolize with a serpent, but they saw that there was a waveform that brought civilization. And this is also then, this is something that historians in general have simply ignored. But then when you start to look at the history of human civilization, with its ups and downs, its rise and falls, you will find that it actually coincides very well with these waves that the Maya charted, and which was the basis of their calendar system. And maybe the most clear-cut example of that would be that in 3115 BC, which is about 5,130 years ago, a new wave was activated or began to be received by the Earth. And what we know, factually speaking, is that is the time when higher civilizations meaning those that have the ability to write and build cities and pyramids and many, many other things. They actually appear on our planet for the first time as this wave is being activated. So when they said that this wave is a bringer of civilization, they are actually just telling the truth. And the way it worked was that this wave actually brought a new mind to humanity, and it was by using this new mind or resonating with this new global mind that people started to acquire the tools to create civilizations. And that, you know, the new mind that this wave brought allowed them to start to write, to start to count, start to build immensely sophisticated architecture and many, many other things. So it's not the rise of civilization, and this of course has to do also with our own current civilization, but the early rise of civilization, it's not a random thing. It's not something that happens for no reason. No, it happens because a new wave was downloadable and it became accessible at a particular point in time. And that, you might say, this new mind transformed the consciousness of humanity. It altered it. It changed it for better and for worse, I should say, but it certainly did undergo a significant change at this point in time.
Would it be fair to say that every renaissance that we have come across in the history of our cultures on the planet would be an example of a wave hitting human consciousness?
I would say so, yes. Sometimes the explanations will be a little bit complex, but I would say that it's always when a new there is an ascending phase of a peak in the wave, so to speak, that is being activated. That's when there is a renaissance of thinking. And this applies also to later points in time in human history, closer to our own particular time. But I would say so, yes, because what happens is that when a new wave is being activated, it influences the human mind, and people change their way of thinking, and then there is a renaissance of thinking, a renaissance of creativity, and these waves affect all aspects. You know, it affects our ability to create art, music, as well as science and technology and so forth. In this perspective, we're much more part of a intelligent plan than I think most people are aware of.
How would revolution play in this as well? If we have a renaissance of creativity and higher intellect, would it also then stir a sense of revolution or rebellion against the current paradigm that people suddenly feel, inspired to change?
Yeah. Certainly, it's not such a big difference between Renaissance and revolution, I would say, and there are periods in time when you can see that these kind of shifts have generated sweeping revolutions in the world. Simply because when people download a new mind, a new type of mind, they will look around in the world and see that the social system, the political system that they are part of is really not consistent with this new mind that they have downloaded, and that will often result in sometimes I should say, sometimes that will result in revolutions. People aspiring to have a complete change in the way that societies are governed and so forth.
Now, when you talk about these downloads, describe for us some symptoms that people might feel when they're experiencing what you call a download.
Well, that's a question I haven't really, I don't think I can answer that question. I think it is like we are transiting into a new way of thinking without really knowing that there is an effect on us from these waves. The way you see it is sort of on a collective scale. Suddenly, or more or less suddenly, whole groups of people are starting to think in new ways, and there are new paradigms emerging, and so forth. But I think most individuals are not, and it's. I couldn't say that I certainly have done a lot of processes of different kinds. Could be spiritual processes and psychological processes and so forth, where you might say that I have experienced that I sort of update my whole consciousness system or my individual consciousness, so to speak. But I haven't directly experienced, well, it has happened. Maybe I need to correct myself there. I come to think of one instance here, which actually is in the foreword of my book, when the big shift that was in 2011, when a number of different waves were changing and so forth, that allowed me to look upon this beginning of civilization in a new way. So I think at that point, yes, I was probably aware that my way of thinking was changing. But mostly, I think these things are so gradual, and usually we are just being part of a new way of thinking that many other people share, that we don't really see that we're under the effect of these kind of waves for the most part. That would be my answer anyway.
That's a great answer. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let's talk about what these waves are. What is the timing of these waves? What's the cycle? Talk to us a little bit about how we can measure these waves. And, are we in one now, or is one coming? Is there a way to calculate their arrival?
Yeah. Yes. So the Mayan calendar system have, you might say, 9 major waves, or it's composed of 9 major waves, and that's why they would build pyramids that were built in 9 levels. They saw that each of these waves sort of created a new frame of consciousness or a new kind of reality, and this was sort of a stepwise process where you start with the first wave that creates one kind of a approach and one way of looking at reality, and then on top of that a new one is activated, and then on top of that comes a new one, and it sort of is like climbing a pyramid. You might say is the way that the universe has evolved if you go back from its very birth until the current time. But these waves have different functions, and they play different roles and they change the human mind in different kind of ways. And that's why, history, we're not just living in a static world. Instead, we're living in a world that undergoes change. And you might say also that the speed of the change has increased. And that has to do with the fact that when you climb this pyramid and go up to higher levels that are developed by higher waves in this calendar system, the frequency of the waves will also increase. Actually, they increase 20-fold every time you climb one step. And when you're resonating with a high-frequency wave, what that means is that change is very rapid. And that is something that many people might have experienced, that, up until the current time, things have speeded up. Time has speeded up is what we say, but it's really the amount of change that has speeded up in this particular process. And so there's a number there, 9 different waves, and their frequency is widely different. The wave that I talked about that started civilization 5,000 years ago, approximately, that has a wave, a full wave period in this wave is almost 800 years, whereas at the top level, the highest frequency wave, a full wave period is as short as 36 days. And this top level wave was activated only as recently as the year 2011. And so it's something that has been active only for a very short period of time. But these different waves, they have played different roles in changing the mentality of humanity, and they have different kinds of effects, and yet you can see that it's like a plan that level after level is activated on top of each other, and where the lower levels are necessary to prepare humanity for the higher levels. And a very important thing to take note of in this particular system is that we have now, and this is only 5 years ago actually, we the highest wave in the system, the 9th wave, the one with the highest frequency, is now activated. So it's only for 5 years that all the 9 waves have been active, and they're now running in parallel, and it sort of has created a big change in our outlook on life, and you certainly see the effects of these the shift in these different waves when you look around in the political changes that goes on on our planet, at least in the Western world. I would say that there is an immense change in how people are looking upon the things, and I look upon that as a result of shifts in these various waves.
Now, as you're describing this, I'm picturing cymatics, where you have sound and vibration, administered to particles or something, and they form a pattern. So we're actually experiencing layers upon layers of these 9 waves happening simultaneously, correct?
Yes. And I think cymatics, as you mentioned, is a great analogy for this. If you the lower of these waves actually has to do with creating the physical bodies of all kinds of organisms, and including the human beings. And if you study cymatics, you will see that often the kind of symmetrical structures that that waves, sound waves, may give rise to, is reproduced, and in higher organisms like ourselves, we are symmetrical structures, and so it is quite conceivable that that's how these waves is active, by creating our bodies through vibrations. But then when you come to the higher levels, the higher frequency levels, you may still apply this cymatics as a model for that, but it's not in the same ways physical biology. Rather, it is these waves are creating like a cymatic structure of lines that is organizing our minds. So on all levels, you might say that these vibrations or these waves are creating, in principle, according to the science of cymatics. But then you climb. You start with the densest levels and the cellular and organismic levels, and then you come up to much higher levels. That is really mental structures creating these waves are carriers of geometries in the way that we can learn from the science of cymatics, and then these geometries play a crucial role in shaping the human mind.
It's really interesting that you say that it starts at the denser levels. So when we have these experiences of these waves coming through us, would it be fair to say then that our biology would feel it first, that we would have some kind of DNA change perhaps, or increase in pain in the human body as we shift?
Yeah, I would think so. I don't know if the mental changes will lead to a DNA change, but I would say that the biological changes that we've undergone, certainly then as part of that is the DNA change. I would say is a result and a product of these waves that we are receiving as organisms. I'm not sure if the mental thing actually changes our DNA. It's possible. I don't know. But it's possible.
Well, it's an interesting thought. It's an interesting thought, because now how does this spread out to other living life forms such as nature or animals or water even? Are we talking about waves that affect every aspect of molecular structure, or is it just human being, the mind of a human being that gets affected by these?
Well, I think the way I have understood it is that the lower four waves affect many different organisms. Basically, these waves will create all kinds of all the plants and animals and bacteria and lower level of organisms that exist on our planet. But it seems like, and presumably in other planets as well, because the view that I'm forwarding here is that these waves emanate from the center of the universe, meaning that they would be broadcast throughout the universe, but creating life forms maybe in many different locations where the conditions are suitable for that. But, as I said before, there might be a universal mind, but it may express itself quite differently because of the local, global minds and so forth. But to return to the question that I think the higher waves, they are only downloaded by human beings. And we are the ones that are carrying what we call a mind, so to speak. We are the ones that can write, and we can count and do these kind of things, which most other organisms, at least on our planets, can only do to a very limited extent. So the higher waves are like waves whose purpose it is to develop human beings.
Gives us something to think about. Now, you talk about in your book that in each culture, the origins of civilization can be tied to the arising of one concept in the human mind, and that's straight lines. Could you talk to us a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up the example of cymatics, that sometimes you can see how waves are bringing straight lines on a plate, so to speak, geometric structures organized, sometimes in 4 directions or like in 8 directions. And the interesting thing in this regard is that when you go to what the ancient Maya would talk about as the beginning point of their long count, which again is this particular wave that started 5,130 years ago, they describe that as sort of the earth becoming dominated by a grid of lines, straight and perpendicular lines. And they talked about this happening a grid was downloaded to the whole earth that created what they partitioning of the earth in 8 different energies. But it was straight lines and perpendicular lines. And the interesting thing then is that that's the description. I mean, this is an ancient description that we know that they left behind. But we know that from the same time, people on our planet started to build structures, megaliths, pyramids, that actually are straight lines, that embody straight lines. And the classical examples may be the Egyptian pyramids, where it's built with a precision that most people would say we couldn't do today, and yet it has exactly this kind of straight line, straight directions with an enormous precision going towards the 4 directions. And so what it looks like is that this construction, these pyramids, were then really a manifestation of this new downloaded mind that was dominated or separated, created by the assimilation of these straight and perpendicular lines. And what also is amazing is the fact that, when we talk about a global mind, is that at that particular point in time, which is 5,000 years ago, plus a little bit more, it wasn't only the Egyptians that started to build pyramids, but around that time, people started to build pyramids in several different locations that we now know of. There are pyramids found in Peru that are 5,000 years old. There are pyramids built in Mongolia, in East Asia, that are about 5,000 years old. There are pyramids built in Mesopotamia, in Italy, from about that particular point in time. So it looks like, this is the basis for saying that it must have been a global change in the human mind, because at the same time, people start to erect structures based on these straight lines in many different parts of the world. And there is a direct connection, I think, between the straight line and the very concept of civilization. I come to think, for instance, of the movie 2001, where they come to some other planet, and there is this megalith, and is based on straight lines, and that's something that makes you certain that not only is there life there, but it's some kind of intelligent, civilized mind. That's really what straight lines. We know somewhere that straight lines are crucial to what we call civilization. It's just that today, we're so used to straight lines, we don't even think about it anymore. And yet, if you look at it, I'm sitting here in the living room, and I can see the television screen is based on straight lines, and there's a staircase based on straight lines, and the roof is straight, and the house has perpendicular corner, etc., etc. And this is civilization. And it comes out of a new mind that had downloaded straight lines in this particular way. And
so you're suggesting that straight lines actually come from as a product of the download from one of these combination of waves at that particular time?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. That's when it begins. And then, of course, today we also have a tremendous amount of straight lines in everywhere where humans are, or civilized humans are.
Well, it also begs the question, the global pyramid culture that started to build all of these around the globe, were they in fact aware of this wave phenomena, and did they do it as kind of a tuning fork for the planet to resonate with these waves?
Well, maybe so. I think they were very aware that a new mind that a new world was coming in from the outside, so to speak. And there are in those days, what we can gather from their inscriptions is that they looked upon civilization as some kind of a gift from the gods. Different gods in different cultures, but that seems to have been a common theme. And overall, I think they were quite excited also about this civilized life that opened up to them. It took a couple of 100 years, but it's still a fairly short time period when people got completely new capabilities, and it's somewhat like the digital revolution that came in our own lifetime and started with the 8th wave, another of these particular waves. But in those days they did, and I think they wanted to reproduce this mind, this global mind that they had downloaded, and that was a major reason that they built pyramids, in order to reproduce this global mind that they were sensing was now accessible to them. But to what extent that then also served to tune into it might, to actually participate in the building of these pyramids, might even have developed their resonance with this new wave and made them more civilized, which is probably what they at that time really wanted to do, because that was sort of the incoming new thing that was in vogue at the time. But I don't really know if it served more, if they wanted to also use the pyramid for some other, as you said, tuning fork purpose or something like that. I cannot tell, but it's possible.
Now, you mentioned the digital world. You know, we've been in the 9 waves for 5 years. That as you said. Now, the digital renaissance that's come out of that has created in what some people term a digital mind. So is it possible that we have become more of a computer-like mind based on our digital renaissance, but could it be also that it's like another renaissance of the mind where we're supposed to be more, I don't know, it just seems like the digital mind has a great reach, and there's ways to expand and download, and a lot of the terms are similar to what you've been speaking of. How do you see the digital renaissance that's happened as an example of a digital mind expansion?
Yeah, well, I would not associate it with the 9th wave that started in 2011. I would associate it with another wave, the 8th wave that started in 1999, and that's really when smart technologies are starting and an interactive internet is emerging, and why. To begin with, what that means is that a new wave became downloadable at that point in time, and as this new wave became downloadable, then people also started to think in new terms and develop a new kind of creativity, and a creativity that was based on everything that we experience to make it digital, so to speak, and from that digitalization of reality, then all kinds of things that seemed like magic came to emerge. But it's how did this happen? Well, it has again to do, if you envision the human mind as being dominated by straight lines, and in particular then one line that separates the left and the right brain half, like a plane or a line that sort of goes through our head and separates the two of them. Then the result of that is that the mind is basically becoming binary, and you might say that one of the brain halves will be you can associate with the number 1, and the other brain half you can associate with the 0. And that's really that's the basis of digitalization with a binary code and so forth. And so you may understand from this way of looking at it that what happened when that way was activated was that a new mind was downloaded that helped people digitalize reality. And once that mental transformation had occurred, the people started to digitalize everything, and from that we have developed all the kind of smart technology that we see in the world today, actually in a very short period of time. And it has to do with the fact that this is a very high-frequency wave compared to the much slower change that people experienced when the pyramids started to be built. But I think it's very relevant to see that these are two different waves, and they have different frequency, meaning that they will develop things with different speeds. But it's still, the pyramidal revolution is in principle just the same as the digital revolution, and they both come out fact of human beings downloading new lines and structuring reality in a new way. I think it's harder for people to see the connection of a mental change leading to the digital revolution, because somehow it looks like something happening outside of ourselves, sort of just magic that drops upon us, something like that. But when you see that it comes out of a change in mind that created a new binary structure of the human mind, you can start to see that, well, a direct result of that would have become this digitalization and the millions of applications that has had on the internet and elsewhere in this short period of time.
So is it fair to say then that this past ninth wave infusion that only happened a short period ago is still going to show, we're just kind of in that baby stage, it's just starting to affect us, and we may not see the full effect for quite some time then?
That's exactly true, and especially in the beginning of waves, it takes time for people to try them out, so to speak, and it takes time until people become fully immersed in these waves. And then there's also, at the current time, is a little bit like a competition between the different waves as to what kind of effects they will have. What waves will dominate humanity? That's one thing. But especially when it comes to this ninth wave, which is really then the highest frequency wave, it's only been, the people that were born into this wave, they are less than 5 years old. And what that means is that even if they may be very gifted and smart and so forth, usually 5 years olds do not play a role in shaping society at large. And so I think there is an effect here. There has been a new wave that has been activated that actually promises a lot of positive changes for humanity, that promises the possibility of peace and harmony, because it's not a dualistic wave, but it's still the shapers of society is much more than 5 years old, and so we are sensing it. We are seeing some reflections of this change towards a golden age that I believe is really the purpose of this cosmic plan to create, but it's far from dominant yet. It's far from dominant, and we are at a very transition point where all kinds of effects are coming in, where some people are trying to hold on to the dualistic mindset of lower waves, whereas others are more into experiencing the higher waves and seeing which actually do provide a path towards unity and towards decreasing conflicts and so forth. But it is yet some time to come until it fully manifests. There's a lot of change that people need to go through in order to come to that point, in order to climb to the highest level of the 9-storied pyramid, if you like. It's a lot of change that people need to do, and people also need to have the intention of changing their ways of being accordingly with that.
I'm curious curious how synchronicity, psychic abilities, and intuition change during these waves. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think for one thing, in this kind of model, we are downloading, even though this is not what we taught in schools or on the official scientific studies or anything like that. But in this model, we are downloading like the same programs for our minds. And that is a basis, or maybe the fundamental basis for this phenomenon that you mentioned, which is called synchronicities. And what that phenomenon is what the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung would call these amazing events that sometimes happen to you and seem meaningful when you go to some faraway country and you meet your next door neighbor, or you suddenly meet 3 persons in a row that have the same name, or all these kind of things that they seem miraculous often, and many people will use them for guidance because of this reason, because they seem inexplicable in some kind of sense. But they're only inexplicable from the traditional materialist worldview that still dominates our society and dominates our educational system and media and so forth. If you change your viewpoint, and if you recognize that we are all part of the same global mind, we're downloading it, then you have taken the first step to understanding that these kind of synchronicities are not so strange at all. It just has to do with what kind of intentions we have, and what kind of beings we are, and that will sort of give the more concrete content of the synchronicities and determine what it is. But the very fact that we are our minds are all connected through this global mind is a way of understanding why we do experience these kind of things, and especially when there are changes in these wave structures that the whole humanity that are accessible to all of humanity. It means that when there is some kind of a change in the waves, it means that many people will take a new direction, and as that happens, people will be aware of a number of events that are aligned with this new direction that is given by the change in the mind, and those phenomena is what I say that would be synchronicities, amazing things happening at the same time, because what we call time when we talk about synchronicities is it's sort of a higher level of time. It's more like timing. It's time for something to happen. And why is it time for something to happen? Well, because it's a certain wave that is influencing people at that particular point in time.
It's absolutely fascinating. So we have this momentum that's building, really. And I guess my next question, I know we're coming to the end of the show, and I wish we had another hour to talk. Why 9? Why only 9 waves? Are we not going to experience another emanation from the center of the universe? And is that something that was determined based on your theory and research into the Mayan calendar?
Well, the number 9 is to begin with. It's not just Mayan. If you go to Asia, to East Asia, you will find there's a number of pagodas that are built in 9 levels there too, and if you go to numerology and listen to different kind of spiritual traditions, they will typically refer to the number 9 as the number of completion. And the system that we're using, the numerical system, is based on the decimal system. In other words, when you come to the number 9, you start anew. We don't go, the single digits do not go higher than 9, because that is a number of completion. And is that true or is it not true? Well, I cannot provide any definite proof of this. I can only point to the fact that there are so many different cultures in so many different parts of the world that give that kind of a quality to the number 9. And so it makes sense to me that the Maya would that it is the highest level of this system. I don't think that means that we are running out of change, so to speak. I think even after a hard time and we go through to a golden age, even that will not be static. These waves will continue to create changes, but within a different framework, and which will allow us to deepen ourselves. The 9th wave brings a unity. It means unity with all that is, and that means also, as I see it, that it will allow for us to continue to deepen our what shall I say, our experience of the universe, even though there isn't a 10th wave. That's
interesting. Well, this has been extraordinarily interesting and fascinating for so many reasons. We are out of time, and thank you so much for being here. Anybody listening, if you'd like to buy the book, The Global Mind and the Rise of Civilization, The Quantum Evolution of Consciousness, you can go to Calleman.com and you can purchase the book. It's out from Bear & Company, available now. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us, Dr. Calleman.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Everybody, have a wonderful evening.